Sorry. Hello and welcome. I'm William, a sociologist at the University of Warwick in the UK, and this is a video series around my book, Muslims in the Neoliberal Empire. How does the society colonizes us, and what can we do about it? There is two, I would say, parallel trends that I've noticed. Either it is, if you look at any lifestyle influencer, celebrity, and lots of governments making cuts on support for people who are either neurodiverse or suffering from mental health challenges. So on one end, you have good vibes only narrative. We don't have room for negativity. On the other end, it's just because of the assumption that people who are neurodiverse or who have mental health struggles should sort themselves out. It's very much something of our time if you look at certain Muslim communities. So in my fieldwork in the UK, I've heard and interviewed people who were kicked out of mosques because either they were deaf or because they had Down syndrome. And this narrative extends to other disabilities even. So it's like communities less and less are able to accommodate differences. You know how ethno-cultural ties or social norms prevail over religion and faith. So yeah, it's a very, very sad picture. Like, why do people even reject or discriminate against other people just because they had the wrong genetic makeup, or because accidents happen in life, and why should they be excluded of the society for something they haven't any responsibility in? But when you think of people who are in survival mode, who came to this country with nothing and have to work very hard to survive, and they see coming to the mosque someone who requires extra care, extra attention, do you think they have the time, the patience, the energy to deal with them, to provide care to them and accommodate their presence in the mosque? So not only that, but people are not even trained properly how to support people with complex conditions. There's a podcast interview of my friend Tony Saleh Wellborn, who runs Mualif, and talks about even how within the Muslim communities people tend to care about low maintenance, high quality converts and dismiss converts who are inversely low quality, high maintenance. So people who went to prison, who have mental health struggles, people who are of underprivileged socioeconomic backgrounds. They're not interesting. They're more work. We already are submerged with work. And that's the message that you find on social media when people say good vibes only. We live in a society which, by definition, to control people, it breaks them. People are broken. We live in the era of social Darwinism, where socioeconomic Darwinism, where it's the survival of the richest, the most powerful, the most famous. I mean, sometimes, even the most famous, they fall from grace. But people have no space, they have no room to hold other people. Because, again, survival mode, everyone wants to make it. People do not have always the capacity to support others. But the thing is, it is a vicious circle, because how many people would have saved their marriage? How many people would have avoided suicide? How many people would have remained Muslim if they had people supporting them, around them? But to understand this phenomenon, which is modern in the sense that, culture of separation, we separate ourselves from people who are different. So it has to do how neoliberalism works. So neoliberalism, reminder, this economic system that became a philosophy, a framework for all parts of life, which advocates for individualism and for competition between individuals. So it has led for people to develop a form of perfectionism. People are usually more demanding of others and themselves. And this culture of perfectionism has led to huge imbalances in the way people lead their lives. So when people have studied work-related suicides, so they find that very often it is the result of office-induced paranoia, like feelings of insecurity and the fear of relaxation, the fear of taking a break. So it is an illustration on how work culture, the cult of productivity and competition has taken over our lives. It has become a ritual that has colonized our existence because humans were not meant to sit in an office from 9 to 5. So some researchers argue that it has become a psychological tool which function is to maintain social and economic hierarchies. This is not a new idea because already if you look at Foucault, discipline and punish, the way schools work and prison have been designed and work in a curiously similar fashion. It's all about maintaining social control in a way. But the thing is, society has moved on. Society has... We're not in the world of discipline and punish to some extent. It's still there, but we're moving on from that. It's more, I would say, of a Huxleyan happy worker culture. We're not forced by law, it's not enforced. We don't have to work 9 to 5, to work for a company, but it is an implicit command. So this is why some people talk about wage slavery. Of course, people have the choice, they have the freedom not to go to work. But what freedom is there if people are condemned to work in such conditions where they don't have the opportunity to progress in their career, they cannot switch to a parallel industry, they cannot set up their own business, and they are virtually trapped in some sort of prison where they are condemned to work themselves to death, basically. And it's again back to meta-colonization, how it's not enforced by the law, but it's subtly disseminated through implicit messages. One example is the Forbes 30 under 30. If you are 30 and you haven't made it on the list, what are you doing with your life? Even though in reality, if you know how economics and society work, you know that most people on the list have been able to make it to that list, not because they are exceptional individual, extremely skilled or talented. They just happen to have the right circumstances, the right environment, the right connections, the right capital to be able to achieve these things. Because no one, or maybe apart from a few exceptions, is self-made. When you hear self-made millionaire, very few people become millionaire overnight and by themselves and out of a vacuum. So as I've touched upon it in chapter 2, neoliberalism is an economic doctrine in the first place, which meant, less regulation, less control from the state, free market in a way. So it has become this life ethics, which means like individualism, competition, and a kind of theology of liberation, a bit like a religion saying that you can escape your circumstances if you work hard enough, if you become rich, famous, or powerful. It serves us the narrative of meritocracy. If you go to the right universities, if you earn this and this qualifications, you're sorted for life. And we know that, no, it's not always the case. It doesn't work like this. And I refer to one video where I talk about conformity and the class ceiling theory by Friedman and Lauriston. Getting jobs nowadays is not a matter of skills, talent, experience, knowledge. It has more to do with, do you have mentors, sponsors, and do you culturally match with them? And this narrative has led people to dismiss those who are not contributing economically to the society, to the financial growth of the society. So when it comes to people who are neurodiverse, disabled, or who suffer from mental health issues or even long-term diseases. So they become liabilities, they become burdens because they're not productive, they're not successful. So when it comes to Muslims, for example, it's this narrative that if you come to this country, you will only be recognized as a valid citizen if you contribute to the economy. And if you do this, you'll be accepted. But in the UK specifically, lots of Muslims have acquired huge amounts of wealth. They are in very high positions like MPs. They are like everywhere in the healthcare system, in the law, education. They are athletes. They are actors in cinema. But have their presence changed the social, economic, and political realities faced by Muslims in the UK? But with this neoliberal framework, which, while on top, thinkers like bell hooks call it a dominator model. We are in a society of domination, where we aim at dominating each other. The most dangerous thing is that we don't even allow people to express themselves. When they express pain, when they express their struggle, when they cry for help, we don't allow this to happen. We don't allow, especially men, to show any forms of weakness. Well, it is a reality. Men have a higher rate of suicide compared to women, and men are sometimes victims of domestic violence because of the social norms and standards in the society. It's very frowned upon for men to express any kind of vulnerability. But sometimes people just need to be listened to. And I'm thinking, especially in Britain, where you have this culture of not letting a word out about how you feel inside. Whereas in France, comparatively, and I'm sure it's very similar in Italy and Spain, you have a culture of moaning and complaining, which is, something I don't really like, but it is, with hindsight, it's maybe a healthier way of coping with the pressures of the society. At least, people express their feelings, they let the anger out. Lots of people, especially during the Trump era, even within Muslim communities, really were very vocal against activism. You have scholars who dismiss activist spaces as, like grievance politics and this kind of things. But, we are in a broken society. People need to grieve. People need to process the pain. If you want people to flourish, if you want people to succeed, if you want people to create sustainable and wonderful things, you need to allow, first of all, people to heal. And healing is a process. It is a journey. It takes sometimes years. And when we talk about demographics, like Muslim demographics in the UK, we are talking about people who have been traumatized for generations, deprived of so many things. So if you want to build something, you need to start somewhere. So it's very easy for people who've never struggled in life to dismiss activist spaces as, negative spaces, like spaces of moaning and complaining. But that indicates a very low understanding of the human experience, of what does it mean to face challenges, trying to overcome barriers, try to heal wounds. And the perpetuation of trauma, the absence of healing, is actually what creates resentment, frustrations, and which leads people to remain divided instead of uniting. Activist spaces are not perfect, but again, people need a space to be able to just exist and acknowledge what they are going through. In a society that doesn't have room to accommodate these identities, these people, is basically going straight towards its own death. But there is hope. Collective trauma needs collective healing. This is why you have lots of different organizations that organize different activities which are not, necessarily about mental health and stuff, but allows people to be together, express themselves, and feel things together. Because, humans are social creatures. We cannot exist and survive in a vacuum. Now, in my book, I talk about initiatives like Rumi's Cave, like Healing Justice London, the Rabbani Project. So these are not initiatives centered around mental health per se, but these are spaces that accommodate people from all walks of life. So if you want to dig deeper into these topics, I encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter, where I'll be updating you about live events, whether it is physical in France, in the UK, in the US, or online. We'll organize some Zoom sessions. I'll be sharing a bit of my work, and we'll be able to have conversations around all these topics. We'll be able to ask questions. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was useful. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.